Tan sigitit na o. Kahkio no aku maganak marsine tuan kahkio ta nos kapita gohtig. Kita tamskat na o kinanaskumt na o kahkio. So I'd just like to say a warm welcome on behalf of the Residential School Survivors Committee. Welcome to Île-à-la-Crosse, the historical Métis community of Île-à-la-Crosse. We will be celebrating 250 years as a community next year in 2026. It's the second oldest community behind Cumberland House. And we'll do an open invite to the Premier to attend our 250-year celebration next summer. So I just want to say that, it's an exciting day for a lot of people. For some people, it might be a bittersweet day as we gather together here to announce the Île-à-la-Crosse Residential School Agreement in Principle, I think we're calling it. So marsi kiapitsne toani pitagohtiik. This day almost coincides. Tomorrow's Orange Shirt Day. It coincides with the Orange Shirt Day, truth and reconciliation among all residential school survivors. A lot of our survivors here in Île-à-la-Crosse have passed on, so keep them in mind because they went through similar or worse situations when they were part of the residential school. So my co-MC today is the mayor from Buffalo Narrows, Shaylee Gardner, and I'm going to have her come up and introduce our committee members that are going to do the opening prayer.
Good morning, everyone. It is a true honor to be here today. As we begin, I kindly ask everyone to rise for the opening prayer. We are blessed to have our elders, Anne Lafleur and Emile Janvier, with us today to guide us in prayer. They're coming.
Welcome, everybody. It has been such a long journey for everyone that had been in the boarding school. And it's such a great honor to have Premier Moe with us and his colleagues. I would like to say the following prayer. All-powerful Creator, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O Creator of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and the forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain, at the expense of the poor and of Mother Earth. Teach us to discover the worth of everything, to be filled with awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature. As we journey towards your infinite light, we thank you for being with us each day. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggles for justice, for love, and for peace. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great day today. We've come a long ways, and we're finally getting an apology and recognized by You talk about truth and reconciliation, but we're telling the truth. But how do you reconcile when nobody's taking a responsibility? But I think that today the government's going to take the responsibility, and we can heal. We can go forward and heal. And I will ask the Creator that we have a good discussion, and like our trip home, that they look after us and take us home to our family. Dari du tinig an hone anja hui daily. And this is a corner khana kunai deni. A has another Nuhanone Laru esti Nuhal Husihu, a sea out no lasana, then a shah histol gala, the over one either notes a adu zinega, Marcin in a sense in the home with Nihu, no jala new no hat you, and you. I see her. Dari, mercy. Thank you. Bye.
Big thank you to our elders, Emile Janvier and Anne Lafleur, for the opening prayer. Merci now. So yeah, just a warm welcome once again to all our survivors, intergenerational survivors that are here. It's an important, historic day today. I also just want to introduce some of our dignitaries that are with us here this morning. Of course, our Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, is present. We have Tim McLeod, Minister of Justice. Everett Hendley, Minister of Education. Eric Schmaltz, First Nations, Northern Affairs. We have Vince Hennekew, Deputy Mayor of Île-à-la-Crosse. Mayor of Île-à-la-Crosse for 2 more hours before Myra gets sworn in. President of the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, Glenn McCallum. Our Member of Parliament, Buckley Belanger. And Brennan Morasti, Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, Northern Region 3. And we have Melvina Obishon, to my right here, member of the committee. That's our head table, and we have our residential school committee seated to the right hand of our table here, of our guest table. So let's give them a nice round of applause. So today it's with great pride that I get to introduce our Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, to come and give some remarks in regards to the residential school agreement in principle, and to talk a little bit about their position as a province. Scott Moe took some time to meet with the residential school committee upstairs here for about 45 minutes, and we thank him for that. So let's give our Premier of Saskatchewan a nice warm welcome to Île-à-la-Crosse.
Thank you very much, Dwayne. And it's not hard to tell when you get to Buckley's hometown. I want to begin, I think, in an appropriate fashion, and that is by acknowledging all of the former students of the Île-à-Crosse School and their families who are present here today. And I want to acknowledge them all day and thank them for taking some time this morning. your stories and the opportunity that we had to spend some time together this morning, as I mentioned, is going to help, I think, not only myself but others in the journey that we need to take together, the journey of reconciliation. And part of that journey is recognizing our past, which we also discussed. I want to, alongside Dwayne, recognize all of the dignitaries that are here today. I will not go through and reintroduce each of them, but I want to thank them for the work that they do on behalf of their community, on behalf of the people they represent, and on behalf of a very grateful province for the work that they do. Thank you to our elders, Anne Lafleur and Emile Janvier, not only for starting us in a good way here this morning, but again for your time this morning and sharing in conversation. Île-à-la-Crosse is truly a beautiful community, and I'm very grateful to be here today. For those that don't have the opportunity to visit Île-à-la-Crosse, they have Buckley, who is able to tell them about how beautiful it is each and every day during his time in Regina. In the spirit of reconciliation, I'm here today to, yes, make an announcement, but I think even more importantly, continue and start to build an even stronger relationship. I'm here to make an announcement on behalf of the government of Saskatchewan that we have reached an agreement in principle with those who attended the Île-à-Crosse school. And under this agreement, we acknowledge that there were individual and cultural harms and abuses that were suffered by former students of the Île-à-Crosse school. Going forward, this agreement will form the very principle, and it's going to form the basis of a comprehensive settlement with the former students of the Île-à-Crosse school. This agreement is made in the spirit of building a positive relationship and promoting reconciliation for the historical injustices and challenges that have been faced by all too many Métis and Indigenous people in our province of Saskatchewan. And as part of this agreement, the province has agreed to pay $40.2 million to address the 4 major pillars of compensation under the class action that was filed. And those 4 major pillars are that the former students shared a common experience, that there was individual abuse, that the community requires legacy, healing, wellness, education, language, culture, and commemoration. And finally, the addressing of the legal fees, the disbursements, and the costs associated with the administration of the entirety of that settlement. As a government, we will support a claims process that is simple, expedited, trauma-informed, and cost-effective. The government of Saskatchewan acknowledges the past, and I would say that we are committed to continuing to work with Métis and Indigenous people in a way that respects the wishes of not only them, but the communities that are impacted. Residential, whether it be day or industrial schools, are a shameful mark on Canada's history, with harmful intergenerational impacts on Indigenous and Métis people. Simply put, these schools were a mistake, and they shouldn't have existed. Today, we acknowledge the role of the province of Saskatchewan and previous Saskatchewan governments in the operation of the Île-à-Crosse school until 1970s, into the 70s. And today, on behalf of the province of Saskatchewan, I apologize to you. Hearing the truth and acknowledging the mistakes of the past are important steps in that path and that journey of reconciliation of which I spoke earlier. We need to continue to work together towards a brighter future for your kids and for mine. When I come to northern communities like Île-à-Crosse, I see the ingenuity and resourcefulness of the people that live here, and I can tell you I'm filled with hope for the future of the community of Île-à-Crosse, and I'm filled with hope for the future of our province and our nation. I truly believe that Saskatchewan is at its very best when we listen, when we understand and move forward together to build our communities together to make this province and this nation a place where everyone is proud to say, that's my home. And part of that work is addressing our past, collective past, not all of it good. That's what we're doing here today. We want to be mindful of the past while setting positive goals for the future, and we heard about that today. Mindful of the past while setting examples for a positive future for that next generation, pursuing opportunities when they arise together for the benefit of all Saskatchewan people, in particular for that next generation, for our children and grandchildren. Annually, you are going to see our government looking to the future to invest in programs that are benefiting all Saskatchewan people across the province, and in particular, benefiting Métis and Indigenous communities that support education, jobs creation, job opportunities, economic reconciliation, as well as community safety. And the last one is one that we work on together across the province. Our government recognizes that sustained economic success is essential to reconciliation. And this is about more than just making investments. This is about investing in our future. It's about creating real partnerships that empower Métis and Indigenous individuals and communities to share fully in the growth and opportunity that we see in Saskatchewan, and in fairness, are seeing across Canada as well. This is why our government had launched the Indigenous Investment Finance Corporation a number of years ago that aims to assist us walking forward together in the ownership of some of the opportunities that are landing in our province. First out project under this partnership was the Seven Stars Energy Project. 5 First Nations, the MNS, received $100 million in loan guarantees. It's about 30% equity stake in that particular project, benefiting nearly 25% of Saskatchewan's Indigenous population. The Île-à-Crosse Fish Company. It's also a great example of economic reconciliation, one that's often talked about by your current MP and former MLA. We continue to highlight Métis and Indigenous business successes through events like the Indigenous Business Gathering. Earlier, that was hosted in Saskatoon. This year, there was over 1,100 attendees or participants that came together in Saskatoon to showcase some of the Indigenous-owned businesses and Indigenous investments that are being made in our communities. We have the Clarence Campo Development Fund. We're making investments alongside Métis communities, Métis businesses to support community projects throughout our province. We have the programs like the First Nations and Métis Community Partnership, the Projects Fund, and the Métis Development Fund, all funds that are put in place so that we can continue to walk that path of reconciliation together. These investments create jobs. They foster long-term economic opportunities for Métis and Indigenous communities, and I would say equally as important, Métis and Indigenous people. If I could just digress for a moment and first say, maybe I'll just share the story of the beaded lanyard that I'm wearing. I received this as a gift in 2019 from the community of Big River First Nation, or Whitefish as I know. In 2019, we hosted all of the premiers from across Saskatchewan at what is called the Council of Federation meeting in our province in Saskatoon. The first day is a day that is focused on Indigenous engagement with, yes, national organizations, provincial organizations, but also local rights holders. And we hosted that day in Big River First Nation. That was the first time that all of the premiers had gathered in an Indigenous community, for their Council of Federation meeting. Each of the premiers received a beaded lanyard with their flag on it. I tried to tell them to give them all Saskatchewan flags. They thought it was more appropriate if the BC premier got his own BC flag. that might indicate something else if we gave them all Saskatchewan flags. However, this is a special lanyard to me, not only because of the way that I received it. This is also the lanyard that I wore when the government of Saskatchewan I made some comments and an apology with respect to another occurrence in our past, and that was the 60 scoop. And I wear it today. I also want to make a comment specific to the community and communities throughout our Northwest, the community of Île-à-la-Crosse and throughout our Northwest. And again, I spoke earlier of a path. We each have our own path on our reconciliation journey, and we each have a role to play, some much more painful paths than others. But we each have a role to play when we look ahead. And much of what has brought us here today has been decisions that you have made in this community and your neighbors throughout northwestern Saskatchewan. And I would start with, I was elected in 2011. I have served with 3 members of the Legislative Assembly from the constituency of Athabasca. The first is now your MP. The second was Jim LeMay. And the third, I believe, is Leroy Laliberty at the back here. I say thank you to each of you. We are here today because of the work that you 3 have done in communicating, advocating, and educating not only myself, but others within the government of Saskatchewan. And I don't know if Jim's here today, but when you see him, I ask you to thank him as well. This is politics aside. We've got all 3 colors here today: red, orange, and green, or blue, or whatever you want to call it. But this work is much more important than any political party that we currently or may represent. And so I say thank you to Buckley, to Jim, and to Leroy for the work that you have done in ensuring that the government of Saskatchewan is able to come to this agreement with the Île-à-Crosse survivors today. This is part of recognizing our past, and now we need to continue to take steps to building that stronger future, working alongside one another so that our province, wherever you might live, and whether you be Indigenous, Métis, or otherwise, that we are working towards more opportunity and a stronger future for our children and ultimately for our grandchildren. So once again, I want to say thank you to everyone here for hosting us today on what I think is an important step in our reconciliation journey. I want to thank you in advance for the fish that I know Buckley are going to say are the best in the province. But it's important for myself to be here to spend the day with you alongside our ministers that are involved in this particular, I think, historic agreement that we're able to get to. It's important for me to be here today alongside our ministers, with you in the community, but most importantly, with those on the committee and those survivors of the Île-à-Crosse school. We're incredibly grateful for your hosting us here today and for your generosity. I can't think of a better note for us to sit down and come together to enjoy one another's company and to talk about the importance of the recognition of today, but also to start and continue conversations on the importance of how we are going to work together to build a much stronger tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much to our Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe. I think it's a privilege to have the Premier of Saskatchewan come here to Île-à-Crosse and address the residential school survivors himself as the top leader of Saskatchewan. So let's give him one more nice round of applause. Merci. So now we're just going to take a little break, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a signing in principle with the Premier of Saskatchewan and the plaintiffs of the residential school survivors. So I'll ask the plaintiffs, the 6 plaintiffs, to come up. Louis Gardner, Malvina Obishon, Donna Janvier, Margaret Aubuchon, Emile Janvier, and oh, myself, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I know, yeah. So we're going to sign the agreement in principle, the 6 plaintiffs and the Premier of Saskatchewan.
The agreement would have fell through.
So Tina, can you come up?
And Dwayne. That's about forgot Dwayne. Okay, what am I?
Okay, so I'll get the plaintiffs to sign first. So you have your name there. We'll start with Margaret Aubuchon. Yeah.
Don't put a neck. So that guy said, we got the same name as that.
Okay, we'll go to Emile Janvier from La Loche.
Use the same pencil, it'll get it framed.
Malvina Aubuchon from Pachinak. Donna Janvier from St. George's Hill.
Yeah,
Okay.
put that pin, yeah.
Louis Gardner from Île-à-la-Crosse. And those are the 6 plaintiffs in class action. And now we'll invite our Premier, Scott Moe. All right, so all the signatures are on the paper. We have an agreement in principle that will move forward with truth and reconciliation and the settlement of the Île-à-la-Crosse residential school.
With that paper. Okay. Forward. Yeah, me too. Over here, one more. Okay. We're on live there. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to invite some of our dignitaries to respond to the Premier's remarks and say a few words. But before I do that, I'm just going to explain the timeline. We'll have our dignitaries speak, and then we'll open it up to media. And then after the media scrum, we'll have lunch. And then after lunch, we have our lawyers, Margaret Waddell and Tina Yang, that are going to go through the residential school settlement, and all the survivors will have an opportunity to respond and ask any questions that you have to our lawyers. So now I'm going to invite Mayor of Buffalo Narrows, co-MC Shaylee, to introduce our next speakers.
Today, we are honored to welcome Louis Gardner and Melvina Obashan. They are both residential school survivors and plaintiffs who have shown tremendous courage in seeking truth and justice. Their resilience and strength continue to inspire our communities. Please join me in welcoming them.
Lindy gone? I got 5 pages here, so relax. No, but anyways, Tansiktit no, Ogakio, survivors, elders, leadership, the guests, and survivors from the surrounding communities. And I'll name them: Patronac, Pine House, La Loche, Buffalo Narrows, Turner, Beauval, Jans Bay, Kobe, Green Lake. That's who participate. Dory Lake, I'm forgetting one. Sled Lake. Any other community am I missing? Michelle Village, Dillon, Garson, so Turner Lake, yeah, I think I mentioned Turner. So, but anyways, those are survivors that attended Île-à-la-Crosse Residential School. It was not only Île-à-la-Crosse, it was the whole Northwest. So, I just want to say welcome. My name is Louis Gardner. I'm a survivor of the Île-à-la-Crosse Residential School. I attended for 9 years. I went in there in 1961 to 70. I was 5 years old. Imagine sending your kid to somewhere strange at 5 years old. I think there'll be a lot of battles at this time if that ever happened. My parents, my brothers and sisters were all survivors. My dad attended school from 1941 to 49. And strange to know, to this day, I'm trying to still figure it out, he couldn't even write his name. So what was the purpose at that time of why he attended Île-à-la-Crosse School? They say it was for education, but I think it was something else. I know they did a lot of work for the missionary, but I still try to figure it out because I know when we used to sit at home, my mom used to teach him how to write his name. Then he attended a school for 8 years. So it was hard for me to figure it out. So, and I stand here before you of all the survivors that have passed on. And I'm speaking on behalf of them too. Because it's very important of our residential school, the history of it, how it became resident. We're one of the first, we're the first, if not one of the first residential schools in all of Canada. And we stand here today with good news, but to me, the battle still carries on. And the agenda was simple. Residential school was no different than the First Nation residential school. It was to take the culture out of the child. That was the agenda. I couldn't use my name. I had a number given to me. And where do you see numbers today? In prison. You're given a number. So that's what we were given. You call your number, and we were not going to call you by your name. Number 48, come to the office. Not Louis Gardner, come to the office. So that kind of stuff we had to pick up right away. You couldn't use your language, the strap, and the abuse were the main weapons: physical, mental, sexual. Those are the weapons that were used. So those, it brings us here today that a lot of survivors lost their culture, the language, way of life, our identity. You know what? We were forced to move from across the lake. We had a good life over there. And they say, but residential school forced us, our parents, to move into town. But you know what? A lot of survivors, we want that thing back. We want to go back there. So we have to find ways of how we're going to do this. I stand before you, like I said, with all the survivors who are not here. I speak on their behalf. Have passed on. Tomorrow is, before I go there, tomorrow is reconciliation, Truth and Reconciliation Day. And another point is, well, I remember, I know a lot of the survivors. I know my late brother, he ran away from the school and he went to the trap line. A lot of our survivors did not proceed post-secondary education. Very low number. A lot of us went into the bush. Way of life, exercising our right, I think it just reflects to that. So, in the Catholic, we still have to talk to the Catholic. Very important that we do it. They need to be part of the healing process because they were the ones that delivered the program. I chose to sit with my grandkids today because it's very important for them to know and understand residential school. They still asked me this morning, what is residential school? So they have to be the voices. We have to educate them. This stuff, this history, it's not only residential school, it goes back to our history of Île-à-Crosse, 250 years. We have to teach this. To us, it should be a curriculum in our schools. They have to know. You want to talk about the truth? Let's do it. The Truth and Reconciliation. The Catholic, you know what? We used to go to church steady. And when we were taught, you go to confession, you tell the truth. We had to. And you know what? Let's reverse that now. Now it's their turn to go to confession, and they tell us the truth. And because I want to steal a quote from Michel, because he was involved with the file for a long time. This impacted 7 generations of harm. 7 generations. Now we have to find a way of how we're going to heal this and fix this for the next 7 generations. We have to. You know, the media, when we did the story on this, the media asked us, he said, so what do you guys want? So what do you want? I said, we want to heal, number one, we want to heal ourselves as a community. We'll do it. The survivors will do it. We have to lead. The survivors, through the Survivors Committee, have to be the lead on this. This is our legacy. We have to do it. Que no. So just give us the tools, is what I told the media. Get government, industry, The Catholic, give us the tools. We'll do it. The communities, surrounding communities. Because it impacts the intergenerational stuff too. We know it. Impacts. And the other point, I know tomorrow is TRC. You know what? Let's not just talk about truth and reconciliation once a year. We should be doing this 365 days a year. Let's focus on that. And no disrespect to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission when it was set up. It was set up based on the recognition of the Indian residential school, recognition of the schools. But we were not involved in it. And today I challenge the leadership to say, you know, maybe we need our own commission with Île-à-la-Crosse Residential School and provide a report. Let's do our own calls for action. Let's put it together and give it to the leadership of provincial government, industry. Let's give it to them. They need to be involved in this because our elders are crying for help. Our young people are crying for help. So, kahkio pogo. You know, I speak Sandy Point, growing up in Sandy Point. And we have one of our elders, the last survivor, Wisal. So with that, I just, want to say, it's, I'm hopeful. I see hope. And that's what we wanted as survivors, to bring some closure to this. And I think, that we're starting to see it. We hope the journey continues and we start to see some real results and start to say, you know what? Let's build a future for the next 7 generations. So, merci. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Marcy Chuk, Emil. Thank you, Anne, for the prayers to start this in a good way. I'd first like to acknowledge the leadership that were here, the province. I'd like to acknowledge MNS for stepping up to the plate. I'd like to acknowledge especially Michelle Leclerc, Vice President Michelle Leclerc, who was instrumental. Michelle was very instrumental in forging this path for us, keeping us on task. And Michelle's legal expertise sure led the way for us. I'm Melvina Aubuchon. I'm from Patchnak, Saskatchewan. I came into residential school at the age of 5 years old. My sister is a year older than me, my sister Mary Aubuchon, couldn't be here with us today due to other circumstances, but I'd like to acknowledge all the communities that Louis mentioned, that all the survivors are from, and the intergenerational survivors. We've suffered a long time. When I came here in Île-à-Crosse, September was always the loneliest time for me. My mom and dad would come here from Patchnak, would take us here by boat, drop us off at the residential school. They'd camp here for a couple days with us. And my sister and my late auntie, who drowned here, and I watched her drown with the nuns, which traumatized me forever. And we would watch my mom and dad go across the lake, and it was so lonely being left behind as a child. Very lonely. My mom and dad would pack clothes for us. We never got to wear those clothes. We were assigned clothes. Our first day we got here, the second day, they cut our hair. My hair was long. My hair was up to my knees. We all had the same haircut. At least we couldn't criticize each other. I stand here before you to let you know that I'm thankful that this day has finally arrived. As Louis mentioned, life at the mission, the boarding home, the residential school, wasn't all roses. We weren't allowed to speak our language. My uncles and my aunties were with me. I never got to see my uncle because we were in separate buildings. We could never talk, even to your brother. You were punished. You were punished with the strap. You were punished, by going to bed early. You were punished by not having your supper, only for talking to your uncle or your brother because they were of opposite sex. I know Louis alluded to the church. That was spiritual abuse, emotional and spiritual abuse by the church. We had to go to church in the morning and in the evening, every day. How many of us do that now? Because we were tortured. We don't do that. I pray in my own way. I smudge now. I've learned to embrace my culture. I love speaking my language when I see Dene people. Settling this class action is not a complete answer to any of the issues that survivors faced, but it will promote healing and journeying towards closure. It is significant for survivors' experience at the school to finally be acknowledged. Thank you, Premier Moe. Thank you. And recognized. Not viewed as a lesser or as a bad as what has happened at IRS. It is important to acknowledge the very purpose of the school was part of a larger colonial agenda and cultural genocide. It was a genocide. Like Louis said, take the Indian out of the Indian, and which makes us more resilient. More communities are gravitating towards language revival, cultural revival, introducing land-based education into their education program so that the young children can learn the culture, not by textbooks, by oral history, by showing, and by learning that way. Thank you. This is a moment to remember. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Louis Gardner and Malvina Aubuchon. I know it's really difficult to give personal testimonies, and a lot of you can relate, I think, to what Louis and Malvina were saying. And, it's easy to bring up those emotions, from 50, 60, 70 years ago. So we do have some counselors in the room. I believe we have Maureen Belanger and Liz DeRocher. They're at the back of the room, so if you need to talk to someone, they're available to you. So with that, we'll introduce our next speaker, and Our next speaker will be speaking on behalf of the municipality of Île-à-Crosse. Our acting mayor for the last 4 months, Buckley resigned 4 months ago and Vince took over. And Vince tells me that in 4 months, he's paved the road from here to the Forks. He's settled the residential school issue by 2 phone calls to Scott Moe. So this guy's quite a leader. So let's give Vincent Hennique a nice warm welcome.
Dwayne said I have 2 hours. He's lying. I have 4 hours. Habits. So anyways, yeah, tanse, welcome to Saskatchewan. Invited guests, dignitaries, Premier Scott Moe, President Glenn McCallum, the cabinet members as well. Merci. Thank you. And also the people from the communities. Msuiti to the survivors, the border boys and the border girls as well. First, I guess congratulations I'd like to say to our new mayor, and I'll give her about 30 seconds to come and welcome you guys on behalf of the village. So give a big hand for Myra Melbuff.
Good morning, everyone. I'd just like to welcome everyone to Île-à-Crosse. This is an historic day for our community and the people from the surrounding communities that attended the boarding school. I'm very humbled to have my grandmother here today, my dad, and all the elders that were attending the boarding school. Like Vince said, he has 4 more hours, so I'll let him lead so he can get his limelight here for a while. And thank you to Scott Moe and the crew for coming in today, and everyone else that was able to attend.
Okay, merci, Myra. I know Dwayne talked about it a little bit, but right off the bat, I'll just say our 250th anniversary next July. We invite everybody here. The countdown is on. So the Prime Minister, the Premier, the diplomats, bureaucrats, everybody, even the Pope. I was talking to the Pope this morning, and he phoned me. I said, can you come to Île-à-Crosse? He said, yeah, but I want to do a little confession booth at the end of the ceremony. I'll take the NDP first, he said. Okay, what about Sask Party and the Liberals? I'm only there for an hour, I think. But anything is possible, but we did invite him as well. So the airport hopefully will be busy. But anyways, on a serious note, we just lost 2 survivors, Kotaklas men, last week. Might offend people, but I want to mention, we say défunt when somebody has passed on, just to show respect. So last weekend from Buffalo Narrows, we had défunt Kim Hansen, and another one here in town, défunt Bridget Morin. So those are 2 names that we lost just recently. So time is of the essence, so merci. Thank you to the provincial government for expediting the process of this boarding school. It's been going on some Kinwas for far too long. We have a word for that in our language. It's called itato, is what we say. So it's nice that the boarding school is finally having recognition, acknowledgement, and reconciliation today. But real quick, I'll do a little history lesson here. About 249 years ago, 1776, around that time, there's only 3 recognized communities in Western Canada: Saskatchewan, Cumberland House, Dwayne talked about, and Red River. Red River is now Winnipeg. So those are the 3 ones, 3 main ones. About this time of year in the fall, you know, you go hunting. They would paddle from the Port Churchill in Manitoba, and all the way here. First they'd meet with, on the other end of our lake here, of course, Patronac. They'll meet with the Denny there as well. And then in a matter of time, when they got to Île-à-Crosse, they'll say, Tanse, bonjour, dranete, and hello. So there's 4 languages there. So in a matter of time, they had el canoe, apoy, and water. Those understood. and that's where our Michif, Northern Michif language started, way back when. So it's about 97.354% Cree, 8.9672% French, and a little bit of English. But anyways, here's a brief chronological history. 1817, Louis Riel's father, Jean-Louis Riel, was born in Île-à-la-Crosse, and then they moved. 1846, arrival of the missionaries in the church, and they opened a boarding school, I believe in 1860, St. Bruno's, the first one, that's what it was called, Roman Catholic missionaries. And then 1868, Sister Sarah Riel begins work at L'Assomption here, and she's buried in her cemetery, by the way, for all you history people. 1885, on April 27, during the Northwest Resistance, most of the personnel and dependents of the Hudson's Bay Company Post and the Roman Catholic Mission here in Île-à-Crosse, they were alarmed at the looting that was happening down the river in Green Lake the previous day, so they took off. They went to north of Patronac, and they're helped by the Dene people there. And then on May 24th, they put a cross there. It's called Cross Island. So a month later, they all came back to Île-à-Crosse. So they were worried about that stuff. 1905, Treaty 10 was signed here in Île-à-Crosse and continued into the next year. Of course, they took 2 weeks to go to La Loche to go get Treaty 10 signed there again. And of course, people are out in the trap lines and stuff, so it took them a while to do that. 1920, residential school in Beauval. The elders say they rebuilt it at Beauval after the one here burned down. And from a U of R article that I read, I was checking it this morning, the Roman Catholic Church operated residential schools for boys and girls at Île-à-Crosse from 1821 to 1976. So that's 150 years. Maudit Sayer, as we would say. So it's probably the oldest, we're probably the oldest in Western Canada, our school. And it's a long time coming for recognition. In 1960, around that time, they weren't too sure, the elders I spoke to, but the boys' convent burned down. That evening, what they do remember, the movie was The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Yeah. So just by that, they remember. 1976, we celebrated our bicentennial, 200 years. Also that year, the boarding and residential school closed its doors and has since been demolished. So it's been a long time coming. So in winding down, I guess some facts might be a little bit off, and there's a need for in-depth review of our Saskatchewan, our history Mageno, the way we lived. After hearing the elders' stories, and I have lots of them documented, I think they had a rougher or tougher time than we did when we were in school. That's not to say there's still atrocities with our generation. There'll be, those will be coming out probably in the near future. So the boarding school, I guess, left a legacy. People from here and surrounding communities are still healing. Language, culture, caring for one another, the stories and medicines, all that knowledge have been lost. So the girls in the convent as well, they too have their own experiences with Stawamina and their stories. So with that, I guess there is a little bit of positive stuff. Stuff like friendships and memories. I remember guys like Ernest La Liberty from Patronac, one of my buddies. Tommy Bacatla from Dillon, I think he was from Dillon. Defin Mathias La Riviere from Patronac. Defin Marius Red Iron from Pine House. There's also brothers Mervyn, Sandy, and John. And Defin Frank Park from La Loche. So those are some of the guys, and he does have a family here as well. And there's local guys like Brian Dijala and Joe Gardner. By the way, where's Tina Yang, our lawyer? Brian and Joe, they want to advance today. I just thought I'd throw that in there. But there's also the Hanson boys from Buffalo, the Tinkers, and there was a lot of sports too. The sports really are positive, I guess. So if it was open a couple more years, maybe 2 more years, I'm thinking, maybe Buckley would have been looked at by the Boston Bruins and not Boston Pizza. So with that, in finishing, I guess, in my own opinion, yeah, kaswapah taman. The single most important product was the education. Xnahamatuin that we gained. We have lots of history in Masaktawak, lots of untold stories, a beautiful language, miumaskihki, good medicine, to share with all of you guys, all of Saskatchewan, all of Canada today. So marasi the federal government, marasi to the local government, the provincial government, to the Métis Nation, as well, of course, our legal team, Tina and Margaret, and of course, the boarding school committee. We still give them a big hand. So I wrote this down, I'll read it. Marasi minapiagol govt kahyon ke kak nigani stachom mina piksquistamagiok. So welcome to all, and remember, visit us here next year for our 250th anniversary, and if you need to know anything about it, talk to Maureen in the back. So anyhow, tama, thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Vince, for your words and for sharing your time with us today. At this time, I'd like to welcome President Glenn McCollum of the Métis Nation. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Good afternoon. Nui mga nastika papa ya hota gwes mantini tina dantiga wituhtia kanus. Umama awagwasi tanima ma kituhtia gumuta school the kola mota kasigati residential school Île-à-la-Crosse. Tamama the elders thank you in the tawagay mahachik. Tapitoy mio asik in a good way te tu tamagi way kamachik ta kagisigak mio sinewan ma. Ego said the committee. Igo kisipi tamigi o kwesi etuski kaya sochi watagi igi watagi tai awel tantuhtagui kiawaga pagichi kaskitana o tapikuhtai tan siga iswani ha ko kaya ti school gagi tuhti chuguta Île-à-la-Crosse residential school tinigi merci. You know, das geht an my wife to be pimpa yakuta. Me chati when the mountain is in Bo Valley of Piggy and Pine House, it was Île-à-la-Crosse, me chato tangian. Kagitap mago isino that I took up it's a good, me chatkin stone at no. The mountain is amiga sticky way takamga kutina so hook out tuhti again or meaty settlements, it was Yatikioga reserves. Kikitapatina o sa sego kwesi gims na wa chipitsigati kipmatsun no anus kai sikitapahtabaki wanos minihku unos che apuchi machipito machimaskihias yestige kaya so sigagitapahtaman tan sigagipisupigyanis tamichetogi wisaktihan kaya kutan ba pa puchin mama sigaya chik tasitos kaut chik tasagi hichigasche michato mutaga pigi o iguta yagon ma kigiskitina o kiwigay mutaman. Ma mueka go sa pagitsano. Kaya o Métis First Nations tigay tuhtigo mo ta residential school Île-à-la-Crosse kisuki mo na o. Muka ko sa kipagtihtina o awega gito tagui. Igwas mo kaga manigiskina o mina. Tan sigagi pisupigi. Lise togu isaktiano. Tas huluyo tas kani podo so asim saste o sisimasti piwi tapmat tagui tsime guta nus kagi sipayak ki wiwa ma residential school kya pe wa hiyo giteano te tuhtia Tagwi snow mato ya, tasitos ka to ya kaste, tan sims tehegi we, igi mai to tago ya kip matsun no. Tapun pa ipuewan ma. Premier Moe, thank you for being here today, and your ministers, and we have our ministers sitting in the crowd today too from the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan. If you look back in the days when what I said in regards to coming here with my wife's mom was a survivor, same with my mom, same with my dad in the Beauval Residential School. We look at our communities, no matter where we come from, the Métis First Nations community and non-Indigenous communities are affected by residential school. How families were taken away at a very young age to be put in a foreign place with a foreign language and a foreign lifestyle. It hurts me when I look back in regards to how it has hurt my dad and my mother, and now has hurt my generation and continues to hurt generations, my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. It's a struggle within the last 8 years to be able to talk about residential school, but more importantly, to be able to have the ear of governments like the federal government and the provincial government. It takes special people to recognize the fact that they've done damage. Not them specifically, but the governments they represent. But history has to change. It has to look at its history in regards to what damage it has done. If you look at the high rate of incarceration, mostly our people. Welfare, mostly our people. Gangs, mostly our people. Drugs, mostly our people. Alcoholism, mostly our people. Think about that. In my little community of Pine House, the mayor is sitting here in the crowd today. We've lost over 100 people through alcohol, including my father. Suicide. So when people talk about reconciliation, I always say it's a weasel word because people like talking about it, but then there's no action. You know, these communities are very strong. They have the means to be able to come together. They have the means to be able to correct their lives in a good way with identity, culture, values, and language that was taken away at a very young age. There's a lot that I don't understand. We got to teach many of them. Many of our people. We have to have the means of it. And it always boils down to money. You know, I compliment our premier in regards to the working partnership, even though a lot of times it lacked in previous years in regards to the actions around policy, very restrictive. It's got to be outside the box thinking, it's got to be outside the box action, and it's got to be a respect and understanding of our culture and to be able to trust us with the capacity we need to be able to build strong our communities and especially our families. So I commend you, Premier, in regards to the support that you've given us in health. Harvesting is coming up. There's a lot of things that we have to work on. But most importantly, this file that we have here today, to be able to have our people smile. I see the smiles this morning when I was here just looking. And to be able to finally see this day coming when our Premier can sit with us and talk about reconciliation, but more importantly, action in regards to the things that have happened to our families. I've got my phone with me here. I'm going to read something. You know, when you look at the history of our people, and the Catholic Church was mentioned, there's a lot of people that were renamed and not even have the actual last name they have, including the Natamagans of my community of Pine House, which my mother was a Natamagan. There's a lot of history, written history, in regards to the lack of consideration and appreciation for Indigenous people. So as I'm reading this, I'm going to add a little bit. This is John A. Macdonald, the Prime Minister of Canada, at the time that residential schools were considered. I've read this to the Prime Minister, and I try as much as I can with the University of Saskatchewan and the provincial government. When the school is on the reserve / I'm going to put my own words, Métis community, they fooled around with words before, I can do it too. The child lives with its parents who are savages. And though he may learn, or she may learn, to read and write, his habits and training mode of thought are Indian and Métis. He is simply a savage who can read and write. It has been strongly impressed upon myself as the head of the department that Indian and Métis children should be withdrawn as much as possible from the parental influence. And the only way to do that would be to put them in central training industrial schools, which are now called residential schools, where they will acquire the habits and modes of thought of a white man. That was our prime minister back in the day. And then the policy was written to put up residential schools, to take the Indian out of the child, or the Métis out of the child. You know, that hurts when you look back and you look back at your mom and dads or your Muslims or your Kukums, caught in two different worlds. And then when you go back, when they spoke your English and said, don't speak that English, that foreign language here, speak your language. And then when they go back to the residential school, say, don't speak that language here, speak the English language. Caught between two worlds. Think about that. There's so many stories that we can hear about what has happened. But the page has turned now. Not that we've forgotten the history of what has happened, but we have to recognize the job that we have still to do. It's a long journey, but we can do it together. I'm very happy nowadays to be able to sit across from the federal government and the province with our premier and his ministers. But I'm telling you now that the policies that are in place will not work. We have to think outside the box. That Section 35 rights is so important. We've been squirting around Section 35. We got to bring it in. By bringing it in is signing agreements that complement our communities. Justice needs to change. Health needs to be different. Mr. Premier, you've shown great leadership to be able to be here today and to be able to continue working with us, the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, and whoever wants to work with you, to be able to find the trail to health, the trail to prosperity. I'm with you. And we'll do it together with the community members. Survivors, thank you so much for your patience, your commitment to the well-being of your families, but more importantly, to the spirit that you carry yourself with to be able to get to this point of where we are today. On behalf of the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you very much to President Glenn McCallum, Métis Nation of Saskatchewan. Let's give him one more nice thank you. Okay, we have one more speaker, but before I go there, Vincent Hennique just sent me a text. He said if Mayor and Council need anything else in the community of Île-à-la-Crosse, he's got 2 hours, and let him know while the Premier's still here, he said. So, our next speaker is a long-time politician, began as mayor of Île-à-Crosse many decades ago, spent, I think, 28 years within the legislature, held multi-ministerial portfolios as part of government, and critic to as part of the opposition. And I guess when Buckley was in the legislature, he'd get up to speak. And the Premier, while Buckley was getting up one time, the Premier said, "Oh no, here comes the north wind," he said. Well, it's nice to inform our Premier that the north wind is now in Ottawa. So let's give a nice warm welcome to our MP, Buckley Belanger.
Thank you very much, Dwayne. So gisigaw tamat na nihiya sisniya wat iguit semgoy ang tanti magis na siginitaw again. Ustam dadala ku jonga wasta hista chigimisipe. Tanti tu gama miskoli go instohtamara gama tanti magis na gama. We still no witamak. I just want to say, Premier, it is indeed a very important and special day, and I thank you and your government for working with the federal government on this particular file that has been long forgotten and long suffered by our region. I want to say, since we got to Ottawa, Premier, you'll be quite impressed with the fact that the very first day I was in Ottawa, as everybody knows, the Prime Minister has a bachelor degree in economics at Harvard, which is a very prestigious university in the U.S. He also has a master's degree in economics at Oxford. So our Prime Minister is a very, very intelligent man. And the very first day I was in the House of Commons with him, he asked for my advice. And I said, geez, I'm just a hockey player from Île-à-la-Crosse. What advice can I afford this guy? So later on, somebody asked me, well, what did he ask you? And I said, he said, do you think this nice weather's gonna last? And that's been the extent of advice he's gotten from your current MP. I just want to point out, Premier, and all those that joined, it's really, really important to point out that these are all survivors from every single community of our region. While the center was based in Île-à-la-Crosse, this has an effect on people right across northwestern Saskatchewan and beyond. So it's important to know that La Loche is part of the settlement. Dillon is part of the settlement. Buffalo Narrows is part of the settlement. And all the people that have worked hard, none other than the survivors group of people led by Mr. Favel, Mr. Norton, Mr. Gardner, Mrs. Aubuchon, I almost said Case, but it's Ms. Case when she was younger, and Mill, and all these survivors committee that worked very, very hard. They should be recognized and honored. But what I think is really, really important is those that we have lost. And there are so many that have died and have not seen this particular day. So, gisagaw no tamuag, katami tawagi tuaw suniao. Treasure those dollars that are given to the survivors today and those families. Do not play with that money. Do not spend it foolishly. And that's the message I have as your MP. Now, I want to share a story I'm sure the Premier doesn't know. But I want to point out as well that our Prime Minister sends his regards and is really pleased with the renewed relationship with our Premier of Saskatchewan. And of course, he wants to keep that relationship going strong. That's the first message. The second message I think is important is that when we were growing up in Île-à-la-Crosse, me and my two brothers, Johnny and Shmoo, like many of you, we went to the school here in Île-à-la-Crosse. It wasn't as long as some people. It wasn't as long as some people. And I remember one guy from Patronac that was always my buddy. And his name was Alec Aubuchon. So Alec, please stand up. I want to recognize him. Stand up, Alec. And Alec today is he's a very, very good hunter. But losing all those skills over the years was pretty amazing. But I want to go back to our story. We were watching Shmoo play hockey, my older brother. And Johnny and I were standing at the edge of there's a snowbank. And we were there after we had lost our mother, and our dad went back to work, and he put all three of us in the residential school. And we've seen a lot of the stuff that kind of went on there, and some were favored and others were not, and some were treated well, others not treated well. So it was pretty amazing, you know, standing at the snowbanks, watching your older brother play hockey, then going back and sleeping upstairs, and not like in the externs, you know who they were, those are the town guys. You know, we referred to them as externs. But then you fast forward, and like many of you survivors, the committee, you fast forward today. And that same little guy that was standing at the edge of the rink and sleeping in a really large dorm, he can now say on behalf of the Prime Minister of Canada and the Government of Canada, I am pleased to see the Île-à-la-Crosse residential school file finally completed from the province's perspective. And that's a long ways. So I celebrate with you. Many of you have excelled in business. Many of you have excelled in politics. You've excelled in protecting your traditional way of life, and you have become an excellent people, despite the fact that we went through the trauma, and that's what it means by surviving that trauma. So the advice I have to the Premier is today is a very important and emotional day for Île-à-la-Crosse. But as I mentioned, it involves First Nations from outside of our community too. They went to our school. For more than a century, this Île-à-Crosse residential boarding school operated here in northwestern Saskatchewan. Almost 100 years of that. Métis, the non-Indigenous and First Nations children were torn from their families and forced to attend this institution. Back in 2023, Mark Miller, the former Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, summed it up very nicely. He said, and I quote, "The people at that school suffered much the same horrors as anyone else that achieved compensation under the Indian residential school settlement." And to this day, though, those survivors have not achieved any form of legal settlement, end quote. That was Mark Miller, our champion within the House of Commons, that made that quote in 2023. Today, I want to honor Mark Miller, and what he has today is a message he wants to share with all of us. As we say thank you to him, he says today, I want to thank all the residential school survivors that attended Île-à-la-Crosse School for their fierce advocacy in making sure that this profound injustice is addressed. I hope today we are one more step forward in achieving a sense of closure in relation to this dark moment in our history that is still felt to this day. So as he shares his message to us, Mark Miller does, I just want to say to Mark again, thank you for your championship in Ottawa during this very troubling time. I'm so glad that our Premier mentioned Leroy, La Liberty. I'm sure glad there's also reference to Michelle for some of her work, LeClaire. I'm also pleased to recognize Clem Shorche, to the MNC, worked very hard on this file over the many years. There are many people that stood alongside of Mark Miller in the past that championed some of these issues. So I want to recognize them as well as I honored my buddy, Alec Aubuchon. We have announced, as we indicated this past summer, a multi-million-dollar agreement in principle between survivors and the federal government this past spring. And we'd hope to see the province act similarly. And Mr. Premier, on behalf of the Government of Canada, we thank you, your cabinet, for your courage and recognition of the challenges that we face. Now I'll end on this note because I think it's really, really important that we share what I think a lot of people want to say. To both the federal and provincial governments and to the Survivors Committee, I implore you, Premier, as we move forward, to focus on our region, not a province-wide perspective, but on our region. And we need speed, Premier. We need speed in resolving these things. And as we mentioned, we need to manage this money well. We need to keep the people informed, as we know in this room that the problem was created here. The price was paid by us. So the benefits need to stay here and the services built here, not anywhere else. We know the work is far from over. Healing takes time. It requires honesty, partnership, and real effort. And Premier, in celebration of this settlement in your announcement today, I assure you that one quote I think is important that we share with the room. And the quote goes, "Someone once told me, progress moves at the speed of trust." And I think between the federal and provincial government, there's a big degree of trust on this particular file. But let us not forget the people we serve in this very room, in this very region, and that's where the priority should be. We cannot be neglected any further. So I reiterate the point of trust, speed, and honesty. The Government of Canada remains a committed, honest partner on this file, Premier. We'll keep doing the work to build a more equitable, prosperous future in partnership with the Indigenous community. So again, Premier, I ask that we now turn together towards building a brighter future for the North, one grounded in truth, dignity, and opportunity for the next generations. Merci, Joe.
All right, that was our MP, Buckley Belanger. Let's give him one more nice round of applause. Okay, so now we have a few minutes for the media, if they want to ask questions. We do have some mics in the room, if there's any media. But we do have several on the line, and I believe they're going to be directed to our Premier. So we have, I'll go to number one, Hallie Mandrick from CTV has a question.
Yes, good afternoon. This is Hallie Mandrick from CTV. I guess I had two questions. The first was not necessarily directed to Premier Moe, but whoever feels the most appropriate to answer. I was just looking to see if someone could speak to the impact that this money will have in promoting reconciliation and healing, and what kind of specific programs or initiatives it might be going towards funding.
Yeah, I can just give a little bit of highlight on that, and this is specific to the $40.2 million that's being provided. And you know, first and foremost, I think I want to say thank you again to those that are involved in the Survivors Committee and the work that they had done. There are four major pillars with respect to, and this is where we took, I think, our guidance from the federal government with the early steps that they had taken on the four major pillars on, you know, where these investments will be provided. And I think there's going to be guidance that's taken from the community as well as we move forward as to what specifically the investments will be made in. And so those four pillars again were that the former students shared a common experience. There was individual abuse. That the community requires legacy, healing, wellness, education, language, culture, and commemoration. The addressing of legal fees, disbursements, and costs associated. And this ties into, I think Minister Belanger had spoken to, with respect to the services. And so as the conversation goes now, you know, the location and what will come from and where that investment will lie will be at the direction of the community, the survivors group, with respect to the pillars that have been set out in the agreement in principle that we have. And so it's a little high level at this point in time. However, I think this is, you know, an opportunity for us to really look at, you know, if we're truly going to work together as we move forward. And as Minister Belanger said, that is rooted in trust. And that conversation will continue to happen as we go through the next number of days, weeks, and months.
Thank you very much. I just had one additional question for you. I was hoping you might be able to speak to your recent visit to Denair Beach, what was accomplished, and who did you speak to during that visit?
We had a good meeting. I was very appreciative of the time. The folks at council and some community folks had the opportunity to speak with. And I had the opportunity to build, I think, on some of the previous visits that Minister McLeod and other ministers have made, I think 3, 4, or 5 visits this summer, and representing their interest in how we have been able to lean in and support in what is a very tragic situation. I would say forest fires are not new to this community either. It isn't that long ago that we saw one, you know, coming down the peninsula here directly for Île-à-la-Crosse. And so we have some unprecedented supports that are in place in the community. We got to discuss that, as well as what opportunities we might have into the future to have, you know, a stronger response, whether it be on the evacuation side or even the wildfire side as well. And I would say, you know, I think today is the day that we see, in addition to the $20 million that we had provided there for cleanup, today's the day we see 35 homes heading north on a Saskatchewan highway as well. And so we will rebuild, and Denair Beach will rebuild, and we'll be there every step of the way to support the community and families that live there.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Scott, we'll go to in the room here. Just identify yourself and who you work for.
This is Alexander Kwan.
We'll use this one.
This is Alexander Kwan with CBC News. Premier, can you walk us through what it was like, the negotiations and to get to this point, the process to get here?
Yeah, I can. There's a number of pieces, and Minister McLeod, you might even add to this, but I would start with you know, some of the conversations in advocacy, not just with myself, but with others from the survivors group of Île-à-Crosse, of which I was tremendously thankful and appreciative of the time they took this morning to, you know, further help me, quite frankly, with whatever my journey on the reconciliation path might be. And that, I think, is something each of us need to take time for. Second to that, there was very good discussions over the last number of years that I have bared witness to with all 3 MLAs from this area, whether it be Buckley Belanger, whether it be Jim Lemaitre, or whether it be Leroy Laliberty today. And each of those 3 deserve a thank you for, again, advancing this conversation in whatever room they might be in and whatever conversation they might be partaking in. You know, last and I think not least is this. And when you look at what does reconciliation truly mean, it means all of us working together to make a better life for that next generation, for our kids in our community where we live in Saskatchewan. And I think that is all of our duty, to look at reconciliation, and my view of reconciliation will morph as time goes by, but for all of us to look at reconciliation in that light, whether you be Indigenous, Métis, or non-Indigenous. That being said, and this leads into progress works at the pace of trust, or progress works at the speed of trust, pardon me. There is certainly a part where we need to recognize and take responsibility for the past, each and all of us. We have a past in Canada It's not all great, but we need to acknowledge it, and we need to work together on understanding it before we can ever take those first steps forward in rebuilding our communities and making our province and our nation a better place for that next generation and for our kids. And so I think today is, in many ways, I hope today is a small step in acknowledging that past and committing to taking those steps forward for a better life for kids that are younger than me.
A quick follow-up. We heard speakers say today that they wanted to have education on this experience. I'm just wondering, what's the government's views on how we educate the public, how we educate people about the past, about residential schools?
Yeah, that's a fair conversation, and maybe some of that will come out of this as well, not even specific to, we have Île-à-Crosse today or Timber Bay, but the other residential schools across Canada as well, which would be part of the treaty education curriculum that our province incorporated into our K-12 schools for all students in Saskatchewan, not just Indigenous students, but all students take as part of their regular curriculum some treaty education in the province. However, that being said, with today, and Île-à-Crosse is, I think, the location for this, is history continues to change. With this very acknowledgement here today, the acknowledgement that was made on the Indigenous residential schools a few years ago, history continues to change and evolve, and I think that's important for us to realize as people in communities like we are here today, but important for our school curriculum and what we are passing on to our children to change as history does so before our very eyes. So it's a good point.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll go to Peyton Zillage from Global.
Hi, my question is for the Premier. I was just wondering, when it comes to what's left in the year, what are some ways we're going to see the province work towards reconciliation before the end of the year?
And I think it is important to say that this is an agreement in principle, and as we find our way through it, it obviously would be certified, and then these investments would be made. And what is in the interest of the survivors and the community, and the broader community that is impacted by this. I've spoken many times to the opportunities that we have, and I think part of this road we have walked already, but we have much further to walk when it comes to reconciliation. And you often hear me talk of the importance of economic reconciliation, whether that be the strongest and most secure gaming agreement in the nation of Canada. And that's what we have in this province, is the strongest Indigenous gaming agreement in the nation of Canada. You heard me talk about the Indigenous Finance Corporation, which has its first project that we were thrilled to participate in, that is representing about 30% of Indigenous communities and in the Indigenous population in our province, and that's the $100 million loan guarantee for the Seven Stars Wind project down in the southern portion of Saskatchewan. One that I often point to as a success is the incorporation through procurement and direct ownership in the forestry industry, which very much, I live on the south edge of the forestry industry. We'd be on the north edge here today. We're about 35% Indigenous-owned company, as well as about 35% Indigenous employment in that industry. And I think, therein lies, as we continue to communicate and work through the fulsome processes that we have, and I think Minister Belanger is having much of this discussion right now as well, with some of the major projects discussion and some of the opportunities that we're seeing as Canadians. It's important for us to work together to ensure that those opportunities are beneficial to all Canadians, whether it be Indigenous or otherwise, and certainly make sure that all of the steps that we have in the process, whether it be the duty to consult or the environmental impacts that we have, are all followed. But there is a great opportunity that lies before us in this province, and I would say more broadly across Canada. I commend the federal government for taking the initiatives that they have so that we have the chance to actually achieve this opportunity. But it's incumbent on us to approach it in the very spirit that we are discussing here today on ensuring that it is to everyone's advantage, not to one area of Canada versus another, and not to one area of Saskatchewan versus another, but it's to everyone's advantage. And that is very much what we are focused on in our reconciliation path as we move forward, is how do we, yes, acknowledge some of the past that we have in this province in Canada, and ensure that we are taking responsibility for it, and it isn't all good. But moving forward together and trying to work together to provide and take advantage of what some of these opportunities are in our province and our nation and our communities, most importantly.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go to mic number 22 to my left in the room.
Hi, Edith Boisvert, Radio-Canada, CBC French. Why did it took the province 18 years to recognize or acknowledge their responsibility in the history of the school at Île-à-la-Crosse?
That's a good question, I think, for us as provincial citizens more general. We haven't been government for that long. However, there has been successive governments that also had an opportunity, I think, to engage and move this conversation along. And I would say that we're late. We're late. As the citizens of this province, we should have been here years ago doing this. It's important that we're here today. It's important that we're here today, and I look for opportunities on discussion with the Timber Bay conversation as well as we move along. It's important that we're here today, and it's also important, I think, as I say a number of times, we need to acknowledge our past, we need to recognize it, we need to take responsibility. That's what today is about. However, we also need to commit to moving forward to ensure that these types of things don't happen again, and to move forward to ensure that we are taking every opportunity to capitalize on the chances that we have to create a better life for our kids and grandchildren. That's why I go to work each and every day. That's why I do what I do. But none of that can happen. None of that can happen without acknowledging our past.
All right, thank you very much for that. We have one more question, and I'll just ask, there's lots of echo in this room, so if we can keep it down a little bit. We'll go to Chris Vander Brekel from Global.
Chris Van Ennenbrekel with Global News. Premier, I'm sorry to change the subject here, but child care workers we heard from this morning say that they're running out of time, that you're running out of time for signing the extension on the child care deal with the federal government. They're saying that they have 6 months left before they could lose their jobs. Where is the province at in terms of signing that extension, and why is it taking so long?
They should not worry about losing their jobs. The province and the federal government will come to an agreement. I am certain, and I would speak to the more recent relationship that the province and the federal government have been embarking on as proof of that is going to happen. There are legitimate questions on how sustainable our child care program is moving forward, even by those jurisdictions that have already signed the agreement. So, I'm confident we're going to find a path forward. We're not late. There's still literally half a year or better left in the existing program that we have. I'm very, very confident that the minister, as well as the federal government, are going to be able to come to an agreement on this particular program and many others in the not too distant future either. So, not to worry, it will be forthcoming.
Does that concern from the child care workers give some onus to speeding up this process at all? Like, when can we expect this agreement to be signed?
As soon as possible.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Just two things. This afternoon, after lunch, we have our lawyers here from Toronto to talk about the details and a timeline in terms of when some of this money will start being dispersed. So come back after lunch, ask the lawyers any questions that you have, or the committee, and we'll be here to answer. And secondly, we just want to thank our Premier of Saskatchewan, our ministers, our local representatives and our President of the Métis Nation, and of course our MP Buckley Belanger. Let's give them a nice round, warm of applause for coming and speaking with us. So merci, thank you very much. We'll pause until after lunch and then we'll get going again to talk about the details of the provincial and federal government settlement.